The smell of pine sap and cold lake air hit me the second I stepped out of the car. Thanksgiving weekend in northern Ontario always smells like that. Clean and sharp, like the world has been rinsed overnight. My daughter Ivy was already running ahead of me up the gravel path, her little rain boots leaving prints in the frost-stiffened grass, her stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. She was 6. She had been talking about this weekend since September. Grandma's house has the good hot chocolate. She told me at least 14 times on the drive up from Toronto. The kind with the real marshmallows, not the tiny ones. I laughed every time she said it. I needed to laugh. The drive had been 4.5 hours, and I had spent most of it trying not to think about how strange the last few weeks had been. My brother hadn't returned a single one of my texts. My sister-in-law had unfollowed me on Instagram, which sounds petty to even notice, but when someone you've known for 8 years suddenly goes quiet, you notice. I told myself it was nothing. Family gets weird around the holidays sometimes. People get stressed. It would sort itself out at the table. It didn't sort itself out at the table. We hadn't even made it to the porch steps when the front door opened and my brother filled the frame. He's taller than me by almost a foot, and in that moment he seemed even larger than usual, arms crossed, shoulders squared like he was blocking a doorway at a club instead of standing at our grandmother's house. "Hey," I said. I was smiling. I don't know why I was still smiling. "We brought the cranberry sauce." Gran asked me to bring the cranberry sauce. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he looked at Ivy, who had stopped running and was standing about 2 feet in front of me, staring up at him with that particular kind of stillness that children have when they sense something adults aren't saying out loud. "This isn't a good time," he said. I waited for the rest of the sentence. There wasn't one. "Sorry. We moved things around. It's just immediate family this year. We should have told you earlier." I looked past him into the hallway. I could see coats on the hooks, shoes at the door, the glow of the kitchen light. I could smell the turkey. I could hear faintly the sound of hockey on the television and my sister-in-law laughing at something. "I am immediate family," I said. He shifted his weight. Didn't answer. Ivy tugged on the hem of my jacket. "Mom," she said quietly. "Are we not staying?" And that was it. That was the moment something in me went very, very still. Not with anger, not yet, but with the particular kind of coldness that arrives when you realize a thing is actually happening. Not a misunderstanding, not a mistake, a choice. "No," I said. My voice came out even. I was almost impressed. "We're not staying." I took Ivy's hand, walked back to the car, put her in her seat, buckled her in. She held her rabbit the whole time and didn't say anything. I got in, started the engine, pulled out of the driveway, and made it exactly 4 kilometers down the highway before I had to pull over onto the gravel shoulder because I couldn't see properly through the tears. I wasn't going to cry in front of my daughter. I had exactly 40 seconds on the shoulder of Highway 11 to get it together, and then I was going to find us somewhere warm with actual food, because Ivy had been in the car since noon and she deserved a hot meal, even if I felt like the ground had opened up underneath me. We found a diner in town. She ordered grilled cheese and chocolate milk. I ordered coffee and pretended to look at the menu. The woman behind the counter brought out a little bowl of turkey stuffing for Ivy without being asked, just because it was Thanksgiving, and Ivy had mentioned it in passing, and I had to breathe very carefully to hold myself together. My phone rang while Ivy was using the restroom. Gran's number. I picked up on the second ring. "Where are you?" Her voice was sharp. Not sharp the way it gets when she's upset, sharp the way it gets when she's holding something in and trying to sound calm. "We're in town, at the diner on Lakeshore." Silence. "He told you not to come," she said. "It wasn't a question. He said it was immediate family this year." Another silence. Longer this time. Then she said, quietly and carefully, as though she was choosing each word with both hands. "You come back to this house right now. You bring that little girl, and you come back right now. I mean it." I had never heard her use that tone about something involving my brother before. Gran loves everyone equally, loudly, fiercely, without hierarchy. She has a photograph of every grandchild on the refrigerator, and she moves them around occasionally so no one's always in the corner. She once drove 40 minutes in a snowstorm to bring my cousin a casserole because his girlfriend had broken up with him. She does not play favorites and she does not issue ultimatums. She had just issued an ultimatum. "Gran, I found something," she said, "and I need you here, and I need you to bring whatever patience you have left, because what I'm about to show you is going to make you want to drive straight to a lawyer's office, and I need you calm first. Can you do that?" I told her I could do that. I didn't actually know if I could do that, but I told her I could. Ivy had finished her grilled cheese by the time I got off the phone. She was coloring on a paper placemat with the crayons the diner keeps in little cups at every table. She looked up at me and I must have had a strange expression because she said very seriously, "Gran called, didn't she?" "She did. Are we going back?" "We're going back." She picked up the green crayon. "I knew it," she said, with all the confidence of someone who has seen enough to know that grandmothers generally win these things. She wasn't wrong. My brother's truck was still in the driveway when we pulled up. So was my sister-in-law's SUV. I had about 30 seconds of standing on that gravel path, wondering how to do this, whether to knock, whether to walk in, whether to call ahead. And then the front door opened and Gran was there in her burgundy cardigan, the one she's had since I was small, and she held out her arm and said, "Come in through the back." We went around the side of the house, through the garden gate, past the old woodpile that's been there since I was a child. Gran held Ivy's hand the whole way. At the back door she paused, looked down at Ivy and said, "There's hot chocolate on the stove, sweetheart. The good kind." Ivy looked at me with an expression that very clearly communicated that she had been right about the marshmallows all along. Gran settled Ivy at the kitchen table with the hot chocolate, and a tin of shortbread that she keeps hidden in the back of the pantry. Then she looked at me across the kitchen, and for the first time since I'd arrived, I saw what was underneath the sharpness in her voice. She looked tired, not sleepy tired, the kind of tired that comes from carrying something heavy for longer than you should have. "Come with me," she said. She led me down the hall to the small study at the back of the house. The room that used to be my grandfather's, that still smells faintly of the pipe tobacco he gave up 20 years before he passed. The room with the good wooden desk and the filing cabinet that Gran has always called the brain of this house, because every important document in our family's history lives in it. Birth certificates, insurance papers, the deed to the property, my grandfather's old correspondence. She closed the door behind us. On the desk, laid out in a careful row, were 5 pieces of paper. I didn't understand what I was looking at for a moment. They looked like financial documents. Then Gran pointed to the first one and I leaned in and I read. It was a power of attorney form, signed with my grandmother's signature, granting my brother full financial authority over her accounts and assets, including the lake house, effective 6 months ago. "That's not my signature," Gran said. I looked at her. "I know what my own handwriting looks like," she said. "I've had the same signature for 61 years. That is not my signature." I looked back at the document. The signature did look like hers. It looked very much like hers. But she was saying it wasn't, and I had no reason, zero reason, not a single one, to doubt her. "Where'd you find this?" I said. "He left a copy in the kitchen drawer. He was looking for the property tax receipt last week, and I saw him with it, and I asked him what it was, and he said it was nothing. Just some paperwork I'd already signed. He was taking care of things. I didn't think anything of it at the time." She paused. "And then he told me you weren't coming for Thanksgiving. He told you I wasn't coming. He told me you'd called and said you couldn't make it. Work commitments." She looked at me steadily. "You've never missed Thanksgiving in 31 years. I hadn't. Not once. Not when I had the flu. Not when I was doing my practicum 4 hours away. Not the year my car broke down in Barrie and I took 2 buses and a taxi to get here. Thanksgiving at Gran's house is not optional. It is not a suggestion. It is the fixed point around which the rest of October orbits." My brother knew that. He had been counting on Gran not questioning it. He had been counting on her accepting the story and not asking me directly. But he'd made the mistake of leaving a copy of that document somewhere she could find it. "I called my lawyer this morning," Gran said. "Before any of this started, before they arrived. I called Roberta. You remember Roberta? She did your grandfather's estate. And I told her what I'd found and I described the signature to her, and she told me to keep the document safe, and to call her back this afternoon. She's going to file a report with the Office of the Public Guardian and Trustee. That's who handles this in Ontario." I was gripping the edge of the desk without realizing it. "Gran," I said. "The lake house is still in my name," she said. I checked. Whatever he was planning, he hadn't gotten that far yet. I exhaled. "But the accounts," she said, "are another matter. Roberta is looking into it. There may be transactions I didn't authorize. We don't know the full picture yet." She picked up the power of attorney form, looked at it for a moment, then set it back down. "He thought I was getting old. He thought I was getting confused. He's been treating me like I can't keep track of things for about a year now, correcting me in front of people, telling me I already agreed to things I never agreed to." She paused. "I didn't say anything because he's my grandson and I kept telling myself it was just impatience or stress. But you don't forge someone's signature because you're stressed. No, you don't." I sat down in the chair across from the desk, the one that used to be mine when I came in here as a kid to look at my grandfather's old books. Gran sat across from me, and for a little while neither of us said anything. "What do you want to do?" I finally asked. "I already did it," she said. "This morning before they got here. Roberta is handling the legal side, and I called my bank and put a freeze on any transactions requiring a power of attorney until Roberta reviews everything." She folded her hands on the desk. "What I want to do now is go out there and have Thanksgiving dinner with my granddaughter and my great-granddaughter." I looked at her. "He doesn't know I found it," she said. "He doesn't know about Roberta. He came up here thinking today was going to go a certain way, and you want to tell him today," I said. At the table. "I want him to know that I know," she said. "I want him to look at me and understand that I am not confused and I am not manageable and I am not signing anything he puts in front of me ever again. And I want you there when that happens, because you are my granddaughter, and you belong at this table and you always have." I don't cry easily. I didn't cry when my marriage ended, not in front of anyone. I didn't cry when I got rejected from my first choice of grad school, or when I had to put down the cat I'd had since university. But sitting in that study, in that chair, with my grandmother looking at me across my grandfather's old desk, I cried then. She handed me a tissue from the pocket of her cardigan without comment. She has always kept tissues in that pocket. I don't know why I find that so comforting, but I always have. "Blow your nose," she said. "And then let's go eat." My brother was in the living room when we came out. My sister-in-law was setting things on the dining table. The hockey game had been muted. Something had shifted in the atmosphere of the house. Not quite tension, but a kind of waiting. He looked at me when I appeared in the doorway, and the expression on his face moved through several things quickly before settling into something careful and neutral. "You came back," he said. "Gran invited me," I said. He looked at Gran. Gran smiled at him pleasantly and went to check on the turkey. Ivy had arranged the shortbread in a pattern on her plate. When she saw me, she held up one piece and said, "I saved you the one with the icing." I sat down next to her and ate the shortbread and tried to remember how to breathe normally. Dinner was the strangest meal I have ever sat through, and I once had Christmas with my ex-husband's family, the year his parents were separating, and no one had told the children yet. This was stranger. Gran served everything herself, moving around the table with perfect serenity, asking Ivy about school, asking my sister-in-law about her sister's new baby. My brother sat at one end of the table and ate and talked, and was almost entirely normal, and I sat at the other end and watched him and thought about those 5 pieces of paper on the desk. Ivy asked for seconds of the stuffing. Gran gave her thirds. It was after dessert, after the pie had been cleared, and Ivy had wandered off to watch something on the small television in the back room, that Gran set down her tea and looked at my brother and said, very quietly, "I need to talk to you about something I found." The air in the room changed. My sister-in-law looked up from her phone. My brother put down his cup, slowly. Gran didn't raise her voice. She didn't dramatize it. She laid it out the same way she'd laid those documents on the desk. Clearly, carefully, one piece at a time. The power of attorney with the forged signature, the call to Roberta, the freeze on the accounts, the report to the office of the public guardian and trustee. My brother's face went through the same rapid sequence of expressions I'd seen in the doorway, but this time none of them landed on something stable. He started to say something about helping her, about trying to protect her assets, about how she'd been forgetting things. Gran let him talk. She didn't interrupt. When he was finished, she said, "I have been doing my own taxes since 1987. I have the same doctor I've had since 1999, and she will confirm that I have no cognitive impairment of any kind. I am 81 years old, and I am sharp as I ever was, and you know that, which is why you waited until I was having a bad week and forged the signature instead of asking me." Silence. "I'm not going to list everything that happens next," Gran said. "Roberta will handle that. What I want you to understand, what I need you to sit with, is that I know. I know what you did, and I know why you did it, and I know that you sent my granddaughter away today because you didn't want a witness." She picked up her tea. "She's here. She was here the whole time." My brother looked at me. I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. Gran had said it. My sister-in-law started to cry, quietly, into her napkin, and I couldn't tell if it was guilt or fear or something else. My brother put his elbows on the table and put his face in his hands. The house was very quiet except for the faint sound of the television in the back room, and the wind off the lake coming through the gap in the kitchen window, that Gran has been meaning to reseal since August. Gran drank her tea. After a while she set the cup down and said to me, "There's leftover pie in the kitchen. Why don't you take some for the drive home?" That was how she ended it. Not with a speech, not with a pronouncement, not with anything I could have predicted from her. She just offered me pie, and somehow that was the most devastating thing she could have said. Because it meant she was done, the matter was handled. She had done what she needed to do, and now it was simply the end of the evening. I cut 2 pieces, one for me and one for Ivy, who appeared in the doorway at that exact moment, with her rabbit under her arm and remnants of shortbread at the corner of her mouth, and said, very matter-of-factly, "Gran, your TV has the channel with the singing competition." "Does it?" Gran said. "It has the one where they spin their chairs. I watched 2 whole episodes." "Come here," Gran said, and Ivy crossed the kitchen and Gran hugged her, long and proper, both arms, the way she hugs everyone she loves. Over Ivy's shoulder, Gran caught my eye and held it for a moment, and what passed between us in that look was something I don't have a clean word for. Recognition, maybe. The particular recognition of 2 people who have both in their own way been underestimated by the same person, and have both in their own way refused to become smaller because of it. I wrapped the pie. I got our coats. I hugged Gran for a long time in the back doorway while Ivy put her boats on, and I felt the familiar scratchy wool of that burgundy cardigan, and thought about how many times I had hugged her in this exact doorway, in every season, at every age, and how she had always felt like the most permanent thing. "Roberta will call me Monday," she said into my shoulder. "I'll call you after. Call me before if you need anything." "I know." She pulled back and looked at me. "You drove 4.5 hours on a holiday weekend. You turned around and came back when I asked. You sat at that table and you didn't say a single thing that made this harder." She smoothed down my collar, the way she used to when I was small. "That's not nothing. That matters more than you know." The drive back was quiet. Ivy fell asleep before we'd even cleared the edge of town, her rabbit tucked under her chin, the pie sitting on the back seat, in the container Gran had wrapped in a tea towel. The highway unspooled ahead of me in the dark, the spruce trees black against the sky, the occasional glow of a farmhouse light through the trees. I thought about my brother sitting at that table. I thought about Gran calling her lawyer on a Saturday morning, methodically, without panic, before anyone else had arrived. I thought about those 5 documents laid out in a row on the desk, and how she had handled all of it, the discovery, the evidence, the confrontation, with the same calm precision she brings to everything else in her life. She had not needed rescuing. She had never needed rescuing. She had simply needed a witness. I was glad I was there. I was glad I turned around. Ivy woke up for about 30 seconds somewhere south of Barry, long enough to say, "Mom, we forgot to ask Gran for the hot chocolate recipe," and then fell back asleep before I could answer. I laughed. Out loud, in the dark, by myself, in that particular way that only happens when you've been through something that was awful and is now, improbably, over. And the person next to you has no idea how close it came to going differently. Gran called Monday, as promised. Roberta had filed everything. The accounts showed 3 unauthorized transfers over the past 4 months, totaling just under $12,000. The power of attorney had been drafted by someone, and the investigation was ongoing. The lake house was secure. Gran's finances were being reviewed, and a formal guardian order was in place to prevent any future changes without legal oversight. The lake house, which my grandfather built with his own hands in 1974, which Gran has maintained for 50 years, which has been the site of every Thanksgiving and Christmas and summer-long weekend I have ever had. That house stayed exactly where it belonged. Ivy asked me, a few weeks later, why we didn't see her great-uncle anymore. I thought about how to answer that. I thought about it for longer than I probably needed to. Sometimes, I said, people make choices that hurt the people who trusted them most. And sometimes the people who were hurt have to decide what to do next. Gran is deciding what she wants to do next. Ivy considered this seriously, the way she considers most things. Then she said, "Is Gran sad?" "I think she's a bit sad, yeah. But I think she's also okay. Because she did the right thing?" "Yeah," I said. "Because she did the right thing." Ivy nodded like this confirmed something she'd already suspected. She picked up her rabbit and went back to her coloring, and I sat at the kitchen table watching her and thought about Gran in that burgundy cardigan, laying documents out in a row on a desk, calling her lawyer on a Saturday morning, deciding, quietly, without fanfare, entirely on her own terms, that she was not going to let this stand. She had been doing the right thing her entire life. It never stopped being the most reliable thing I knew about her. The good hot chocolate, the real marshmallows, the shortbread tin hidden in the pantry. And underneath all of it, this. A woman who has always known exactly who she is and has never once let anyone convince her otherwise. That's the part I want my daughter to remember. That's the part I want her to carry.